Welcome to Just Talking About Jesus. I'm Jan Johnson, a seasoned believer who loves relationships and, just talking about Jesus. Welcome, listeners, to episode 10. I'm so very happy you're joining me today. Last episode, we heard from Crystal Johnson, who shared some of the points she's writing about in the book God is calling her to write. The title is You Were Made to Thrive, where she shares victory over depression and anxious moments, and more. Today's guests are Shawn and Nancy Paul, who have been missionaries in Honduras and are presently serving in Guatemala. In our conversation today, we talk about what mission life is like for Shawn and Nancy, the vision God has given Shawn for ministering online to pastors in all nations, Nancy's children's ministry, missionary care, and there are many ways to be a missionary. So let's dive in. So I have Shawn and Nancy Paul. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
Nice to have you with us. You have been in the mission field for 10 years. What led you to do that?
What led us to go into missions?
Yeah.
It was basically the Lord, because like I try to tell everybody else, our life was fine. Prior to, we were doing quite well in our careers, financially, family, church life. Everything was great. So it was definitely God that said, go. So we did.
How did you decide where you were going to go?
I would include Nancy in this, but it was kind of a thing that I kind of, the Lord kind of led me down this path. Missions, she was more of a missionary, short-term team missionary than I was. I've been on a trip to Mexico, but as far as missions, as far as something of interest, I was there to serve, pass out boxes, whatever it was. And then in 2007 at a Christmas party for our church, my pastor said he's going to Honduras. And the Spirit of God just leaped in my heart and said, you need to go. So that March, I believe, I went to my first trip to Honduras, and it was to the same organization that my pastor went to. And as a missionary was sitting there sharing about his mission organization, it just resonated in my spirit, like, you're coming here, not necessarily to that organization, but you're coming to Honduras to become a missionary. So that's how I chose Honduras. And then obviously my wife and I prayed it out, worked it out, and walked through that process of getting to the mission field.
Isn't that something how you just know when God really wants you to do something?
Oh, yeah.
It keeps nagging at you.
Yeah.
And I've had little times when I go, really? You really want me to do that? Like start a podcast? Really? I don't know anything about doing that. But yeah. And then it turns out to be exactly what was right for your heart, because,
Yeah.
desire, he knows the real desire of our hearts.
We've been in the mission field for 10 years now, and I'm not going to say that it's etched in stone, but we just don't really have any desire to leave. We love what we do. We love being here. We love doing the work that God's called us to. So
When you went down there the first time, you probably had some little bit of a preconceived idea of what it was going to be like. Did it turn out to be that way, or is it?
Well, first of all, my husband came down, was it for 3 months?
in
In
2009,
2009, he came down and I believe it was everything he thought it was going to be. However, the location was just maybe a little bit different. And I can remember the year before we go, he actually went to Copan and prayed and fasted in there and then came back home. And a year later, or somewhat like that, myself, him, and my daughter, we actually came to Copan and just to put our feet on the ground, and then, went back and we just said, yeah, this is it. And that's how we did that. That was kind of the interesting thing, but it was a process for us. It wasn't a quick process, but it was a process that took a while, that we had to work together on it. And we had to be quiet and listen to God's voice directing and leading us.
as far as when you say, was it what we expected? when we got on ground, we had a ministry that we thought we were going to connect with. Nothing against them, but they just really didn't have a heart for the rural communities, the rural pastors at that time. So that was really the only change that we experienced. A lot of missionaries experienced culture shock. I think myself, I try to share with people, one, I've been back and forth for 5 years, so I kind of knew what to expect. And then just the former military kind of guy inside of me, you just kind of, I guess the military etched my heart in the way of just having grit and just overcoming, and then being a business owner and so forth. My wife, I think you kind of dealt with a little bit of, not, I don't want to say cabin fever, but let's just say little town fever, because we were out in the middle of nowhere, 3 to 4 hours away from a major city. She did kind of get a little restless because of that, but that's really only thing that we really dealt with. I would say that we went through culture shock pretty easy.
But in saying that, going through culture shock, the one thing that is interesting when you do go through culture shock, or if you ever do, is that I don't think we jumped into it. We allowed God to prepare us, and as a family, as well as missionaries, prepare us together and to be there for that support when I miss my grandbabies and my husband's there and he's loving on me and saying nice things to me to help me along here. So it wasn't as much as a huge difference for like Shawn, but for me, it was a little bit more of a challenging because of the culture shock. Like he said, out in nowhere, not being able to know a lick of Spanish, but hello and goodbye, hola, adios. And then having to go to the grocery store and try to figure out what I'm actually buying. That was kind of and then to convert it, that was pretty much the only culture shock that really kind of was a hindrance for me as well.
It takes a while, to get used to different
Yeah.
foods or different things or different ways or cultural ways of doing things. I'm guessing that you probably built relationships first before you really started doing ministry.
Yeah, we got on ground there. And like I said, the first ministry that we thought we were going to connect with, because we specifically went there to go meet them and talk to them and make plans to connect with them. But it just, within the first 2 weeks, you just kind of knew that this was not working out. Actually, it was really good that the Lord put everything together, because there was an evangelist that came to town, and he was an American from Florida. It was already an established community event that he had going. So I jumped aboard and said, hey, we'll help. And then it was evident that they needed somebody to do photography. We had cameras and everything. So Nancy and I both went the next day to go do photography for this team. And that's when we met Pastor Fabio. So really I think within 2 to 3 weeks, we met Pastor Fabio. And pretty much for the 9 years that we lived in Honduras, Fabio was our connection to the communities. And through him, he started out as a Bible study in one community on Thursday nights. By the time we were said and done in Honduras, I mean, he went to 16 communities. We built multiple churches, reaching, I don't want to evangelistically speaking, saying thousands of people, but I mean, we touched hundreds or thousands of people's lives for the gospel of Jesus Christ through Pastor Fabio. But also we did work with another ministry there. That was more, it took a couple years to meet a key individual there. And then once we met that person, so there's 2 ministries that we were working with before we left Honduras.
And you were probably the answer to his prayers. He'd been praying to have somebody walk beside him and to help out too.
Yeah. Well, and I always tell people, Nancy says it took some time for us to get to the mission field, which was 5 years. But I always tell people we didn't leave too early and we didn't leave too late, because Fabio was actually in the United States illegally, and he came back. So if we went too early, we would have never met Fabio. Maybe later, maybe we got frustrated or something. I don't know. But when we got there, he just got back, not within months. meaning like 30 days, but I mean, maybe 6 to 9 months or whatever. He just got back. So it was a perfect timing for all of us.
What have been some of the obstacles that you've encountered?
Language would be, for me, would be language. I don't know.
For me, I would probably say, well, I wouldn't say so much language because wherever I went, I had a translator, and as Shawn says, he speaks Taco Bell Spanish. Well, I have my own language when it comes to Spanish. I don't know. I've had a lot of people say, I don't know what you're speaking, but they understand you. And so that's all that's important is that when I do go up there or when I went out, I could speak to help. But whenever I ministered or something like that, I would always have a translator. So for me, that was not a real hindrance because always use it. I'd always have her with me. But for Shawn, yeah, that was, and even to this day, we don't speak fluent Spanish. And, some people can say it's a good thing. Some people can say that's a bad thing. You should be fluent. But it also then helps us to rely on a national, somebody that we can come in and we can help and we can build that partnership or that relationship with, and we can go do something with. And it was a benefit for me to be able to have her with me, but an obstacle.
Have there been obstacles to you sharing your faith?
No, not at all. I mean, there's no hindrances in Guatemala or Honduras or even El Salvador. It's totally a different environment as far as,
That's what
than the United States. I mean, obviously in the United States,
What
you're like, I don't live in fear, but I'm just saying, you're just like, okay, if I say something, am I going to trigger somebody? Here, I mean, it's not even uncommon to see like maybe a police officer, like there's a marathon, it was a marathon, a lady fell down and hurt herself and a police officer was praying over her. You go into the governmental building, there's scriptures on the wall, there's praise and worship music playing. During one of the riots or whatever, there were police officers on their knees praying, so there's no barriers here as far as to share the gospel
that we have come across.
Yeah, I've never came across anything. Obstacles, I just don't really honestly can't sit here and say obstacles. What has prevented us from ministering the gospel of Jesus Christ? Really nothing. I mean, we've always been able to do so. Obviously, money, finances. I mean, if you had more, you could do more. And God's been very good to us to be able to do what we've done since we've lived here. So we're very fortunate, and I have no complaints. I can't sit here and murmur about anything. That's not even who I am anyway as an individual. So maybe there has been obstacles, but I'm just too happy-go-lucky that I'm like, I didn't even know there was an obstacle.
But the other thing is that, you look at what is an obstacle. Okay, you could take the 2 hurricanes. You could take the pandemic. That can be an obstacle, but you have to adapt. The mission field is all about adapting. And if you cannot adapt, then that's an obstacle for you because the culture is completely different in the United States than where it is in where we are. And it's not that you adjust to their culture, but you have to adapt through whatever it may be. We had the pandemic. Well, obviously everybody was limited. Well, God supplied a way that we could get a pass from the mayor and we were able to go out and minister. We had that. So there's always a way. You just have to seek God and find that way and adapt to whatever obstacles in front of you. I remember we drove through a barricade, but you just do what you got to do for the gospel of Jesus Christ to get it out.
Yeah. So Nancy, you've been involved in working with the children and children's ministry. Tell us about that.
Well, when we first landed in Honduras and we went up and we were going to the churches, I noticed right away our heart was to minister, to work together, to come to the field to work together. And so we did that. And I never thought that I would be starting a children's ministry or working in the children's ministry. But I'm telling you, if you want to change a community, you want to change a country or whatever, you have to start with children. You have to start influence them with gospel of Jesus Christ. And so when we went up to the communities where we went to minister, you would see the adults would be perfectly fine. The youth, they were nowhere to be found. And the children, they would be out playing, running around, running up the pulpit, running down, cause of mom and dad. So
Run amok.
yeah, so it was a vital need right there, the children's ministry. So wherever we went to minister, if there wasn't a children's ministry, we created one with the pastor, through the pastor, to seek and find somebody local or nationals that would be willing or had the desire to come teach and children. And so we did that for, I think we did it a year or so, or maybe two in Honduras, might even been longer. And then my husband said to me, well, I think you're going to now teach teachers. So then all the teachers came in and I started teaching teachers how to teach children. And then they would go back into their communities. So like Shawn would say, instead of teaching 70 children, which is what I taught in La Laguna, he said, now you have several teachers that are now going out, taking your material and teaching them. And you have hundreds of children that are hearing it. So,
Which is a better model anyway, because that way it's coming from them
exactly.
and it empowers them to be doing, yeah.
And it doesn't limit God.
Right.
And so if you are developing and training people to be a duplicate or whatever of you, a disciple or whatever the case may be, when God has you to go somewhere else, the seed that was sown doesn't fall on soil that is bad. It's going to fall on good soil and it's going to continue to reap a harvest. So
yeah,
that's kind of with children's ministry, that's kind of wherever I go, whatever I do, whatever community, that's my heart. That's what I go. And that's what I am. That's who I am.
and I imagine that they just are loving it, having the vision of something to do with their kids that they probably never even thought about doing,
Yes. And you would talk to a child and you would say, what do you want to be? And I want to be a farmer. I want to be as good as my dad or as good as my mom. But the word dream or hope was not a vocabulary that they knew. They never knew, hey, I could be an airline pilot or I could be a president or whatever the case may be. But you go in there and you prepare them and you give them hope that they can be great, who they are, and they allow God to come in and use them, then they can be anything. And that's the whole goal, is to take the Spirit of the Lord into everybody so that they can be empowered to go and do great things.
Yeah. Well, in some sense, that's what you're doing too, Shawn. Now that you're working with pastors, tell us about what you're doing with your online ministries.
Yeah, I've kind of evolved a little bit over the years. While in Honduras, it was more community, is more ministering in local churches and so forth, ministering to local pastors conferences and so forth. Since we got to Guatemala, I've developed an online resource center, so to speak, for pastors around the world. We're connected to 232 pastors, I believe, the last time I checked. And, these are pastors in Africa, India, Pakistan, and so forth. And so I just kind of felt like they're wanting more than what I can provide, in the sense of more of a leadership role. That's just not my place in ministry. I'm more of a teacher of the gospel, more of a writer. And then Life is Jesus Christ, that's the resource center.com. That's evolved into blogging, podcasting, and also videos. So in saying all that, I've talked about our sending church in Kentucky we've been a part of for 30 some years. And our Pastor Terry Lynn Scott's just more of a dynamic leadership. God's placed that in his life. That's who he is. That's what he's anointed to do. So we kind of collaborated together to develop an actual ministerial association. So that's kind of a role that I've taken place in that actual, it's called ALMA, Abundant Living Ministerial Association. I'm the director. I mean, titles is no big deal, but director of minister relations.
somebody has to be the director.
So more or less, I'm working with fellow ministers globally to bring them into the association. And then on top of that, we're developing leadership type curriculum, leadership content, just various types of content that will help them strengthen their ministries. And then once we get our residency in Guatemala, we'll be able to leave country. Once you apply for residency in Guatemala, you can't leave. And so until that residency's been approved. So I would say that soon I will be able to go into other countries and hold pastor conferences and seminars. So that's kind of really what I see my role as, is managing Life as Jesus Christ platform, but at the same time, holding pastor conferences, seminars, and then also managing the membership role and communicating with pastors globally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Boy, that's big.
Well,
Because
yeah. I mean, right now it's manageable, so we just pray that it stays manageable.
Yeah, but just as it grows and people know that you're available, and when people are hungry, they're going to seek it out, and knowing how to, again, equipping people, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different missions is a wide spectrum, and I try to share that with people. A lot of people get this vision that a missionary is somebody that's in a local community building houses, putting roofs on, whatever it may be, or have a medical clinic, and that's great. And I'm not negating any of that. I'm not devaluing any of that. We go to church with many missionaries, and probably many of those do those type of things. But it's just, we did that. And again, it's not like we walked away or we graduated, we went to a higher level. It's just that God has just gravitated me more into this direction. And really, actually, in December of 2022, it just really was on my heart of reaching globally for pastors. So I didn't know how that looked. It started out as a resource center, and just many pastors were coming, connecting, and then they were saying, we want to be a part of your ministry. We want you to be our pastor. We want you to be our leader. And I was just like, I'm sorry, I'm not a pastor, and I'm just not in that. That's just not what God's put in my heart, And so, like I said, that's how this just kind of blossomed into what it is now. So,
Yeah, and anytime you're starting something new, you have to figure out what is your true focus, and where can you draw lines and boundaries and things to what really, because if you're spread too thin and you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, really, it divides you up from where.
Well, it just spreads you thin, and you can't be effective for really what you believe that you're led to be doing. It's just like here recently, a couple of weeks ago, I had to drop a lot of things. I just had to say, well, you're doing this and you're doing this and you're doing this. And I was busy. And like my pastor said, he came to our home here. He visited Bible college here, probably about 4 hours away. And he came and stopped by our home, and we got to talking. He says, are you doing works or working for the kingdom of God? Works is just being busy about a lot of good stuff, but it doesn't mean that it's effective. And also it doesn't mean that really God's called you to do it. It's just going to wear you out. And it's not that I was way off base, but what it was is just, I had a lot of little things that I was doing, like posting to social media, sending out emails, doing this, doing that. It's just like, I'm done. There's no fruit in it. It's done.
Yeah.
So I've really kind of fine-tuned my life. And basically, I'm just better at saying no now than I was before. So
yeah.
When you think about it, when Peter was asked to get out of the boat, and he got out of the boat, and he had his focus on Jesus, and that's what but then when all the distractions and everything, that wasn't what happened. He sank, and not that we sank, but those things needed to be put away as well as, and so I think that goes for everybody.
I mean, I got a really good explanation on that, and it's from a pastor friend in Arizona. He used a story of Peter. I think it was Peter and John that went to the Mount Transfiguration. If I'm wrong, for those listeners just listening right now, I apologize. And then Jesus was talking to Moses and Elijah. I again could be wrong. And then Peter says, "Hey, how about if I build you all three a tabernacle?" And Jesus, like, and again, it's kind of like today's phrase, like, hey, chill out, slow down. no, we're not building no tabernacles here. And it's just kind of like if Peter would have built a tabernacle, he could have totally distracted everything that Peter was supposed to be doing in his life. And all of a sudden now Peter's got a tourist attraction charging fees to see the tabernacle that he built, on Mount Transfiguration. And I'm sure they'd still be here today. And so, see, it's like Peter was going to get distracted. So, see, we have to be the same way. We have to be very, very careful in not being distracted with all the shiny things and chase after what God's called us to chase after, not chase after what we feel like might be good. And, oh, we could reach people by doing this. And it's just like, or I could increase offerings by doing this. And it's just like, I am so much more at peace today than I was 3 weeks ago, because again, I was just chasing a bunch of shiny things, trying to get my name out in the hopes that someone's going to say, hey, I want to connect with you. I want to partner with you. And now I'm just like, God, you go do the connecting and partnering. I'm going to trust you. And I'm just going to continue doing the work that you call me to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Because he's going to bring whoever he feels he's going to put on their hearts,
Sure.
to be with you. And that's what it's about anyway, just trusting him to do. First of all, trust him. Yes, I believe this is what you're calling me to do right now. And you're going to make it go wherever you want it to be, Yeah.
Amen.
Because there's the mission field, there's needs everywhere. But you have to pray and seek God for the need that you're to go and take care of, or the need that is where you are supposed to be at. So that's
totally
some
agree with that. So any personal stories of things that you've seen or people that have been impacted by what you've done?
Well, I mean, we've seen a lot of that as far as like the Bible college that we did we did a 2-year Bible college. It was extended Bible college from the United States. We did 2 years there. I mean, it's just pretty cool to see these pastors from the mountain communities. Probably many of them have very little education. And on the day of graduation, they had their family there. They had their diplomas holding up. I mean, they were, I don't want to say proud, but they were just very, very happy. Their family was very proud of them. So yeah, that's a blessing, but just many things that you come across and being able to touch people's lives with during the pandemic, we were able to feed just a lot of families. We were able to be a blessing to many families, kids coming up, lining up in front of our door, as far as not our house door, but we had like a wall around our home, lining up, and we would feed several kids, but really kind of families, because they were coming to get the food and we gave them quite a bit of food to be able to take back home. So, I mean, just being used of God in those kind of ways, hosting short-term mission teams. It's a blessing to see the impact that you're making on people's lives, because my life was changed on a short-term team, so I realize the value. A lot of times you have people say, short-term teams aren't really valuable. You could have saved that money and used it for the whole entire missions and yada, yada, yada. Well, yeah. Okay. So the mission team spends 15 grand to come down. Yeah. You could have just gave it to the missionary, but see, to me, I look like this. How many people on that team that God is working on their hearts to become full-time missionaries? I would probably say that the to the level of who's becoming missionaries would be so limited, because that's where people come to realization and they discover missions for their life, and they never even knew that that was even an option, so just
Even
seeing
being able
short-term
to
team.
see,
Huh?
but even for them to experience a third world country that they're not used to, that's huge. Everybody needs to
Oh,
be.
absolutely. I mean, I've seen youth, their lives are radically transformed on the mission, because obviously the accessibility of things, cell phones and toys and whatever it may be in the United States isn't available here. And they recognize that and they begin to appreciate what they have at home, and they take a whole different attitude. I mean, like my whole entire life was radically transformed. Basically, the mission field radically transformed my heart in a radical way. And it answered a prayer in my life, because I was so obsessed with money. Again, I discovered missions. I discovered to become a missionary. And then I was obsessed with money. I'm not boasting and bragging. I mean, we were making a strong 6-figure income, And I was obsessed with money, and that obsession ruled my life. I was in sales, commission sales. And if I even was down $2,000 in 1 month, we didn't even need all that money. I would just go into a tailspin of anxiety and depression. And once I got to the mission field, I'm like, wait a minute, these people don't have nothing and they still have joy and peace. And
And
so,
isn't there something too? I mean,
yeah,
you just see that they can be peaceful and happy and
yeah,
joyful. It's like, yeah,
yeah. So just seeing people's lives being touched on short-term teams is another thing that was a blessing for me, to be that we could be that conduit to be able to bring that to them.
I would say for me, one great thing that I have seen and noticed is obviously those that are coming on the short term, but and them as individuals, when they come here, they don't feel adequate that they could do what they are being asked to do in the mission field. And so I think while they're in the mission field, I believe God speaks to them, God changes and transforms their lives. So when they go back, they can they can do greater things and step up in the ministry of what. So, oh, I never knew I could minister. Oh, you mean I can minister? I ministered to children. And now you go back and now they are in the children's ministry or ministering, or I
right.
never knew I could be a leader. And now the leader is or the person that was on the mission team is now leading the mission trips back and forth. And so for me, that I think is one of the greatest enjoyments of seeing how the life of the individual obviously is changed for naturally, but then, for their abilities, their gifts, their talents, how they transform when they go back to the US. That has been
Yeah.
great, and it's odd because we talk about who we've seen transform the most, and it's the teams or the people that come here from North America to South America or wherever. But
Right.
if you ask me things that I've noticed or I've seen where we've ministered, I would have to say it's not something that I definitely go and look for to see a transformation. You just go and you do, and you be part of that transformation. So it's kind of like when you and your spouse are getting older, oh, you still look great, oh yeah, I haven't gained weight. No, you haven't gained weight. Well, we just kind of grow together, and it's not something that you really recognize. However, when we moved to Guatemala, they had a team that we weren't able to go to back in Honduras, and somebody had went up to them and said, "Well, can I tell you about Jesus? Let me tell you and share the gospel of Jesus Christ with you." And they said, "Oh, we've already heard that from Shawn and Nancy."
Oh,
So that to me that is a great, compliment that we were there diligently doing, what God had called us to do. And you don't know who this seed is going to affect. You just throw it out there and whoever takes, but eventually I believe we will know.
Yeah, of course.
yeah. 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 Huh. Uh, okay. Okay. Anything else you want to share?
Uh, I mean, we really covered everything in regards to missions. I mean, I would, to me, I think the greatest mistake that a lot of people make when they look at missions, they see missionaries. They go, "Oh, well, I'm not a missionary." And so then what they do is they devalue who they could be in missions. And the thing of it is, missions is not just a missionary being on the mission field. Missions can be being a coordinator at the local church, being somebody that goes out and talks to people on the behalf of missionaries, somebody that could, have charitable events, like a golf scramble or whatever it may be, or you're collecting things for missionaries, whatever it may be. You might be a team coordinator at your church to actually take teams to the mission field. So never minimize what you can do for missions. Again, I've seen so many things. There's a lady in Florida that I connected with. Her and her husband has a ministry where they go and teach and train churches on how to have missionary care. More or less, a lot of times missionaries feel very alone. They feel forgotten. They feel left behind. And so what they do is they teach churches on how to actually connect with your missionary and how to ensure your missionary knows that you care for them. There's a lot of times that missionaries, they don't, they're hurting, they're going through struggles, but they don't feel like they can call and contact their pastor because they feel like they may lose support. So they're very tight-lipped. Maybe they're going through some marital issues, or maybe their kids are going, crazy in the mission field, whatever it may be, and they don't even know how to reach out. So that's the importance of like having missionary care. So, never limit what you can do for missions. And again, you may not be called to ever even step in the foreign lands, but you may be called to be that one. Like I remember this, my mother-in-law's church, they support us, and we went and visited. And after church was over with, there was this lady, and she had her little table all set up and everything. And she was connected to another missionary there in Africa. And she was passing out like these art crafts that the kids made, And so see, to me, that's somebody involved in missions. She may never, ever, ever get to the mission field, or she may never, ever get to the mission field again because of her age, but she's still actively involved in missions. So never limit what you can do for missions. And it may be in your local church, or it may be, in your neighborhood, or whatever it may be, but you're still reaching people across the globe because of something that you're doing for missions.
I remember one of my greatest things for me was somebody bought me a quad, and that quad gave me access to go anywhere and everywhere where a vehicle could not go or should not go. But man, it carried me. But I'm going to tell you what, when I received that news, I felt like $1 million. And just like Shawn said, is, you may not be able to go, but don't limit God, with what you can do for a missionary or for missions. Mm-hmm. So, and that is so, so important. It's just like an injection you get in your arm that, man, they are behind me. They are supporting. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And that's so important.
It's a vote of confidence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, and again, even minimizing just even an email, or, hey, I've been thinking about you. How can I pray for you? And we had one lady, and it's not always about things and money. I'm just saying, we had one lady that all of a sudden my Cash App goes off. I'm like, what's this? And she's like, take your wife out to dinner, just little things like that, So, just be used of God. Amen. and allow God to lead and guide you on how you can connect with somebody or do something for missions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it'd be nice to put in the show notes your links and how people could get in touch with you or find out what you're doing, or your website, or whatever you got going like that, to, just to spread the love.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for sharing all of that. I'm anxious to share it with my people. My people will be your people.
Your podcast people.
My podcast people.
Yeah.
We've heard in other interviews how the seed was planted in their hearts when they were involved in children's ministries, and how they accepted the Lord as a child or held on to what they learned and made their decision later in life. Such important work that Nancy's doing. And it's so great that the internet makes an avenue for Shawn to teach pastors from all over the world. Incredible. Had you thought before about ministering to missionaries? What a great concept. If you'd like to support Shawn and Nancy, their website, morningstarmissions.org, and lifeisjesuschrist.com is in their show links. You can also find them on Facebook. Or maybe you'd like to know about local missionary works in your own churches. Either way, pray about how God can use you. Acts 12:24. But the word of God continued to spread and flourish. I pray that I can be an instrument in this way. Thanks so much for listening. I look forward to sharing another transforming story with you next week.